Romans chapter 11, verses 11 through 24. Paul here gives the image of being grafted onto a tree. You take a very healthy and established tree. Then you very carefully cut off a branch off that healthy tree. And then you carefully cut a branch from another tree. Then you graft them. You attach it with some cloth, moisture, and soil and moss. And the amazing thing is, over time, the tree and the new formed branch becomes completely fused. The original tree and the grafted branch grow new xylem and phloem. That's like the veins and arteries of the tree. And they become connected. The new branch is alive and grows with the established tree. So in this analogy, the Gentiles, that would be us, the Gentiles are the branch from a wild olive tree. And then Jews are a cultivated older tree. And by becoming Christians, the Gentiles have been grafted onto a tree that was not originally their own, but now has become their own. They are completely of one tree now, even though they didn't start out that way. I like to think about bonsai trees. Bonsai is a Japanese art form. The bonsai artist takes a tree and over a long period of time, a baby tree initially, and over a long period of time, they prune it, they shape it, they manipulate the tree, which the artist grows in a pot. And the goal is over many, many years to make the tree that is alive and growing, but also keep it very small. But even though it's small, they want to create the illusion that this tree is very, very old, ancient, wild, and weathered. Like this is a tree that you would see on the side of a rocky mountain that endured storm and snow and all sorts of difficult times. But it's shrunken, it's miniature. It's like a model of a big tree. The bonsai tree will often look gnarled, twisted, and weathered. The older, the more gnarled, the better. And oftentimes, substantial portions of the tree will have dead, white chunks of wood, adding to the illusion that this tree is hundreds of years old. It's quite beautiful. I fantasize that when I'm old and retired, I want to grow and cultivate bonsai trees in my leisure time. I found out recently that sometimes bonsai tree artists cheat, in a sense. Okay, so the goal is to make a tree look way older than it really is. Now, some bonsai trees are truly hundreds of years old, and they look like it, and they're very expensive and rare, and it obviously takes hundreds of years to produce them, and they're hard to get. So some people take much younger bonsai trees, and then they get chunks of gnarled and weathered dead tree parts, and they literally, with super glue the living tree onto the dead tree. Now, the gluing is very artful and subtle, and it's beautiful, and it looks like one tree. And this tree is part old and dead. And then there's part of it that's alive. Now, cosmetically, it's perfect and beautiful, but it's just glue. It's not one tree. It never was one tree. It never will be one tree. It's in some sense the opposite of the grafting that Paul is talking about. Let's go back to Paul now. In Paul's analogy, we are grafted. We are truly living and grafted. We are organically and fully connected to the church, the body of Christ, and to Christ himself. We are not like the bonsai trees that I just described, merely adjacent, cosmetically connected, glued on, if you will, but never really fused, no xylem flowing, connecting together. We're not growing in that analogy, but we're attached and attached, but in appearance only. That's not what we are. No, Paul is saying that as Christians, we are truly and deeply fused with God and the church. Now, if that's the case, I want to think through some implications. First, we should never feel entitled, like being part of the body of Christ or belonging to God is a birthright, that we naturally were born into this. It is ours. We deserve it. We have no right to Christ. We have no right to being part of his church or his body. We were brought in from the outside, like a foreign branch that's been grafted on. And so we're just lucky to be here. Or to use another analogy, we're like orphans in an orphanage. And this loving, stable family, for no reason, nothing that we never comprehend, nothing we ever earned, just showed up one day and plucked us out of the orphanage and adopted us into their family. That's who we are. We're orphans. And we were adopted into a fantastic family that lavished upon us love and every privilege of being part of this family. And so we should always just be grateful if we think of ourselves as being grafted on. Secondly, though, on the other hand, we should never feel like second-class citizens. We are fully and organically part of God's family. We are not merely living in this person's house. We are not adjacent. We're not just hanging around. We're not just glued on. We are fully and organically belonging to this family, this church, this body of Christ. We've become one tree. And that point of grafting is indistinguishable from the rest of the tree after a few years. Third, you're a branch. Your existence is completely contingent and dependent on being connected with the rest of the tree. If you get cut off, you will spiritually die because you need that nutrition that you get from the roots and the rest of the tree. You can't survive on your own. Recently, someone asked me, do Christians have to go to church? Or put another way, can I be a Christian and not go to church? I mean, it's a theoretical question. I don't know. Maybe you can be. I mean, there are always unique circumstances. Maybe someone's an invalid and they're stuck in the middle of nowhere. There's just reasons why they cannot attend church. Okay, and I think God has mercy on those people. But if we take the analogy of the branches, trees, and grafting, again, we derive our spiritual life and our spiritual nutrition on the continual moment-by-moment sustenance of being connected, not just adjacent, not just nearby, but being living and connected to God and the people in the church.